There's kind of 4 areas to it that I always would tell a story around a brand about. And there's 4, I guess, tensions that you need to play to when you want to create a brand that has longevity and that is really resonant. And the first one is, what's the cultural tension that it's playing to? What is going on and why do you have longevity in terms of where culture is heading? The second thing is what's going on in the category and what kind of white spaces or what tensions can you rub up against?
Yeah.
The third one is who's your consumer? What makes them different? And the fourth one is what makes your brand and your product, what's in its DNA? What can you do that no one else can do? And I sort of took those 4 elements, and for Botivo, what that was in culture, the tension was life is fucking shit, basically.
Yeah.
At the moment, no one can buy houses, COVID's going on, the economy is going to shit, everything feels really heavy and really overwhelming. Mm-hmm. And yet then what drinks in the category want people to then do is, then also, by the way, moderate and don't drink. So life's rubbish anyway, and I'm now going to come to you and I'm going to say, also, you can't drink anymore and you can't do this and this is, no, you can't do that, no, you can't do this. And so the cultural tension was actually, for real feels really heavy, so we're going to play a role in culture which is really delightful and pleasurable and light. Mm-hmm. So that was kind of, that fed into it.
Yeah.
And the tension in terms of the category was, at the time, and I think even now, to be honest.
So with the category, so you're looking at the alcohol. Were you looking at?
I'm looking at anything which doesn't have alcohol in it. So I'm looking at soft drinks, I'm looking at health drinks, I'm looking at non-alcoholic.
Not just kind of the aperitivo vibe.
No.
So you weren't looking at seedlip and fill in the blank.
That as well.
But you're looking at the full
spectrum,
okay,
yeah. And you're going, what is the what's the tension here? And actually, when it came to non-alcoholic, the tension was, it's all about moderation. It's all about what you can't do. And actually, the tension that how we wanted to rub up against that was, we're not about moderation. We're about the opposite. We're about hedonism and pleasure. So that was kind of what fed into that. So
tension 1 is culture. We're going to
So tension 1 is we're going to bring delight to people when things are really rubbish. Tension number 2 is we're going to bring pleasure to a category that's all about holding back and moderation. And then the consumer one was, actually, we're not going to talk to people that are, let's say, really health conscious or are doing stuff to cut back on calories. It was actually about kind of hedonistic pleasure seekers who love food and drink, who love how things are made, who love the quality of ingredients, like foodies, effectively.
Yep.
And actually at the time, and even now, I think a lot of the narratives around the non-alcoholic space are like sober curious or holding back or health. And actually, we don't ever talk about health, even though we're really healthy, because our strategy is to go really big on pleasure and deliciousness and foodies, and we're promising them taste and an experience, not a moderation thing. And then the fourth one, which was, it's less of a tension actually, but is the brand one, is more, what can you do authentically to tell that story which no one else can? And we are the only brand that has no flavorings or preservatives in our category, in the kind of spirits category. We were the only one that took a year to make. We're the only one that had a maker at the heart of it, in spirits, not in wine alternatives, etc. So the reason why we could claim, this idea of sort of being artisanal but also being quite hedonistic was because it was an artisanal process, but the liquid itself was so punchy and so powerful and strong and not watered down, and it could sort of talk the talk that we were kind of promising people. So that was the kind of whole strategy behind it.
Yeah, that tension thing's really interesting. That Alex Smith has the whole thing of unique selling points are kind of not like, so many people talk about features, not benefits, when they're kind of, we're more probiotic, less calories, more protein. It's kind of just stuff that's very conscious, and it's like, every fucker out there is saying the same thing. Do you know what I mean? And actually what he said, and that's almost like kind of conscious. Unique selling points are kind of conscious, but actually going deeper is unique points of disagreement, and that's where you can hit people subconsciously. It's like, how do you, and I suppose, Imme, your thing of saying this is that those tensions, it's like, what do you push against? What do you disagree with someone on? Because that's how you find, as you say, that kind of white space in the category. Yeah. And I think it's really interesting what you're saying. Yeah, because as consuming the brand, looking at the brand, the activations, it's the antithesis to that kind of moderation, kind of watered down, not enjoyable, delicious, indulgent experience. And that's super interesting. Where did you learn those 4 kind of tenets?
I worked in sort of brand building for, on the agency side for years. And actually that was an iteration of that was what we were sort of taught in terms of where to do brand positionings, basically. It was always look at those 4 areas.
What were some of the brands you did?
I worked for like Adidas, like Nike and Diageo, Heineken, Grey Goose, like just a whole range.
So would Adidas create like a like how the Adidas would have that kind of thinking with the product?
Yeah, so it would be like, I'd work on like brand architecture stuff, for example, where it'd be like, what is the Adidas master brand, and then what are the sub brands, and how do they all live together as a family, and how do we sort of identify and really clarify their different personalities and how they all sit together as a.
Sick. Is that there's an example of that?
I mean, it changes literally every like 2 years. That's the thing.
Yeah.
When I did that, I was consultant. I was in the agency for 7 years, then I was consultant directly for brands for like 8 years. And I'd say that I probably worked on the same brands like 3 or 4 times, and every time it would evolve.
Interesting. Yeah, because that's another thing we were talking about with Mark this morning, is this evolution piece of brands. It's like how you have to evolve. I talk about this, I've been writing about this, like the champagne versus Cocoa Pop problem. So the champagne is like kind of when you've got your early adopters, and it's kind of so many founders of middle class create middle class products for middle class people, middle class branding, middle class price points. That's great. But if you want to come to the Cocoa Pop shopper, which isn't an Aldi shopper, it's someone who probably shops in Sainsbury's, and is cognizant of the price of Cocoa Pops, right? So it's like, how do you go from champagne? This is niche, this is mass market. And I think, as you said at the beginning with these lavish parties, it was quite old cottage, I think you said, brand. And now you've kind of ballooned it into this Botivo, and it's like we're not trying to suppress people from having fun. I think that's how you move from champagne to Cocoa Pop. Espressos is sponsored by supply chain software gurus Unleashed. It talks your e-com and accounting software. It's helped islands cut admin time in half, get granular clarity on your margins, know where your stock is, don't miss availability. Brands like Candy Kittens, Tiny Rebel and Trip all use Unleashed, and so should you.